So, I want you to just picture a scenario for a second. You are on a ship.
Okay, a ship.
Yeah. And it's this gorgeous day. The passengers are, drinking cocktails on the deck. The crew is swabbing the floor. And everyone is just totally thrilled because the ship is moving incredibly fast.
Sounds like a great trip.
Right. But then you look up at the bridge. And there is one person standing up there. Let's call them the navigator, who is completely ignoring the party.
Of course.
They aren't even looking at the water right in front of the bow. They're just staring, like 5 miles out, completely silent, and they look absolutely miserable.
And the rest of the crew is probably looking up at them thinking, what is their problem?
Exactly. Like, why aren't they helping us clean? Why are they just standing there?
Right.
But then, say 6 months later, you realize that while everyone else was celebrating how fast they were going, that navigator was the only one who actually saw the iceberg 5 miles away. And that silence, it wasn't them being lazy. That was them doing the exact, precise math on how to turn a 100,000-ton vessel without flipping it completely over.
I mean, that is just the perfect image to start with today, because we are taking a deep dive into the mind of exactly that kind of person, the helmsman.
Yeah.
The individual who basically just ignores all the immediate daily noise so they can save the entire underlying structure.
And specifically, we are talking about the WSSN profile.
Yes.
Also known as the World Awakener.
Which, I have to say, is a title that sounds like it belongs in some kind of Marvel movie, doesn't it? The World Awakener.
It really does. It sounds like a superhero.
It does. But as we unpack the source material today, which comes directly from the Max Energy ME80 personality system,
Right.
you're going to see it is not about magic superpowers at all.
Right.
It's actually about a very specific, incredibly high-pressure mental mechanic.
So before we get into the actual nuts and bolts of how this person's brain is wired, let's just set the stage for you. What exactly is the Max Energy ME80 system?
Right, so we need to be clear that we aren't just looking at your standard run-of-the-mill personality test here.
Not at all.
The ME80 system is built entirely around this concept of an energy matrix. So it doesn't just ask those basic questions like, are you shy or are you loud?
Right, the usual stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Instead, it looks at how you process information internally, which it calls your energy input, and then how you actually release that energy into the world, which is your manifestation.
So it's kind of like looking at the actual operating system of a computer rather than just admiring the plastic case it comes in.
That is exactly it. And the WSSN, this World Awakener profile, they have a very, very distinct operating system.
They really do. Let's talk about their identity first, because the report has this hero section that defines who they are right out of the gate. What is the main headline there?
The core declaration is actually really powerful. It says, quote, awakens collective consciousness through insight, allowing the world to begin anew.
Begin anew. I mean, that is a heavy phrase.
It is.
It almost implies that the old world, well, it has to end first.
Yes, exactly. And honestly, that is a big reason why this personality type can be so intimidating to be around. They are defined in the system as an awakening guidance personality.
Meaning what, practically?
Meaning, they are not interested in patching holes in a sinking ship. They are the ones who look at the ship and say, you know what, this whole design is fundamentally flawed. We need to build a new one.
So while the rest of us are, I don't know, running around with duct tape trying to fix the plumbing.
The World Awakener is sitting in the corner, drafting blueprints for a totally different kind of boat.
Wow. Okay.
They just do not rush to solve immediate problems if those problems are just symptoms of a broken system. They focus completely on system-wide reorientation. But, and this is a really key point, they do this from a position of stability.
Right. The report mentions that.
Yeah, they aren't anarchists just throwing Molotov cocktails for fun. They genuinely want to move the group from one stable state across a bridge into a new, better stable state.
Which brings us nicely to their control mechanism. How do they actually see the world to pull that off? Because let's be honest, if I'm ignoring a grease fire in my kitchen because I'm busy drawing blueprints for a new house, my family's going to be furious with me.
Oh, absolutely. But it all comes down to their global vision.
Yeah.
Their attention just naturally extends out to the longest possible timeline.
Okay.
I mean, most people live in the now, or maybe they plan for next week. The WSSN lives perpetually in 3 years from now. And because of that, their actual definition of what constitutes a risk is completely different from yours or mine.
How so? Give me an example.
Well, for most of us, risk is just volatility. It's
Yeah.
the stock market dropping today or a client calling up and screaming at us. It's immediate, visible pain.
Sure.
But for the World Awakener, that stuff is just daily noise. For them, true risk, the ultimate nightmare, is a collective group traveling perfectly comfortably on the completely wrong course.
Oh, that's a great distinction. So for them, hitting a pothole on the road isn't a real problem.
Right.
Driving incredibly smoothly right off the edge of a cliff, that is the actual problem.
Exactly. Their entire philosophy of control is about transforming this idea of holding on to the present into making room for the next phase.
Right.
They're constantly sitting there asking, can our old pathways actually support the future? And if the answer is no, they immediately start preparing for a massive shift.
But the way they prepare, and this is where the deep dive gets really good, that's where this energy matrix concept comes in.
Yes, the matrix is fascinating here.
The report describes a really specific rhythm for the WSSN's energy. It calls it, let me check my notes, internal fermentation, calibration, and directional shift.
That's right.
Now, I love a good glass of wine, so fermentation sounds great to me, but what does that actually mean in the context of human psychology?
It's actually the perfect metaphor for them. Think about making wine. You take grapes, which represent raw data, and you put them into a sealed, dark barrel, and you do not touch it. You just let pressure and time do all the heavy lifting. The material literally changes chemically. The WSSN does exactly this with information.
So they just sit on it.
They take in the raw data of the world, and then they retreat into fermentation. They simulate, they correct, they verify everything entirely inside their own heads.
So it is a really slow burn.
It's a slow burn until it suddenly isn't. It starts with internal risk scanning, moves to that internal simulation, and then it ends with this massively concentrated release of energy. A total shift in direction.
Okay, I really want to break this down layer by layer because the ME80 framework is very specific about how this maps out.
Let's do it.
We have 4 layers to cover: the IP, IQ, EQ, and manifestation layers. Let's start right at the bottom, the foundation. The IP layer, which is the inner value. What is happening down there?
The function of the IP layer here is risk perception activation. You can basically think of this as they're always on radar. Even when a world awakener is just sitting at a casual dinner party looking totally relaxed, that internal radar is constantly pinging.
What are they scanning for at dinner party?
Structural weaknesses. They're always asking, is this sustainable?
Give me a business example.
Sure. Let's say they are at a big company all-hands meeting. The CEO's up there cheering, sales are through the roof, everyone in the room is high-fiving.
The vibes are good.
Right. But the WSSN is sitting way in the back, totally quiet, noticing that the new flagship product completely relies on a single supply chain that is mathematically about to collapse in 6 months.
Oh, man.
They aren't trying to be pessimistic. They're just literally seeing the crack in the foundation that everyone else is too busy celebrating to notice.
So they are essentially the ultimate buzzkill.
Oh, yeah.
But like a necessary buzzkill for survival.
100% a survivalist buzzkill, yes.
All right, so moving up one level to the IQ layer, which the system calls the emotional activation layer. In this specific profile, it's defined as experience-driven verification judgment. How does that actually work in their head?
This is their mental simulation engine. Once that IP radar picks up a structural risk, the WSSN does not just guess at a solution.
They don't just go with their gut.
No, they run a full mental movie. They pull from all their past experiences, all the complex patterns they've ever seen, and they simulate the future to see how it plays out.
So they are basically playing 4D chess in their mind while everyone else is playing checkers.
Exactly. They sit there thinking, okay, if we stay on this current course, in 6 months, X is going to happen, which triggers Y, and then the whole system breaks.
Right.
They use this internal logic to verify their intuition. They absolutely need to be sure. They will not make a move until that internal simulation proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are right.
But here's the thing. While they are running these massive complex simulations in silence, they are still surrounded by people who are waiting for them to leave.
Yes.
And that brings us to the EQ layer, the decision calculation layer.
And honestly, this is usually the hardest part for them. The function of their EQ layer is emotional carrying capacity and stabilization.
Carrying capacity.
Yeah. Imagine trying to hold a 100-pound weight above your head while simultaneously trying to solve an advanced calculus problem. That is what their EQ is doing.
So they have to act as the stabilizer for everybody else?
Precisely. While their brain is internally screaming, the bridge is out ahead, we're all going to crash. Their emotional layer has to remain completely perfectly calm.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. Because they have to hold the group together during that entire fermentation phase. If they panic before they have a solution, the whole group panics.
Right.
So they just become a brick wall, a total poker face. They absorb all the latent anxiety of the group so the group doesn't just disintegrate before the master plan is actually ready to deploy.
Wow. Okay, so finally we get to the very top, the manifestation layer. The fermentation is finally done, the mental simulation is verified, and that poker face drops. What happens then?
Energy released outward. This is the big directional shift. And let me tell you, it is rarely subtle.
I can imagine.
Because they have spent so much time quietly calibrating, when they do finally act, it is a massive structural transformation. They don't just suggest a minor tweak to the workflow, they literally rotate the entire building 90 degrees.
Give me a real-world example of what that kind of manifestation actually looks like.
Okay, think of a CEO who runs a very successful legacy printing company. For years, profits are fine, everyone is happy, but this CEO, who is a WSSN, has been fermenting on the undeniable rise of digital media.
They see the iceberg?
Right. And then one day, seemingly out of nowhere to everyone else, they call a meeting and announce, "We are selling all the physical printing presses. We are becoming a digital analytics firm starting today."
Oh my God, that would be a massive shock to the system for the employees.
It is a huge shock, but it's not impulsive at all. It is the direct result of maybe months or even years of silent internal processing. It is a calculated survival move.
I want to dig just a little deeper into the internal traits that drive this kind of extreme behavior, because the report does a deep analysis of their core trait, which it calls long-term judgment.
Yes. The underlying mantra for the WSSN is simply direction first, then speed.
Which really flies in the face of our whole modern business culture, doesn't it? Like everyone always says move fast and break things, or fail fast.
Oh, the WSSN completely hates the idea of fail fast if it means you are failing in the wrong direction.
Right.
They fundamentally believe that if you are running west when you should be running east, speed is actually your worst enemy. The faster you run, the more lost you get.
So they're just constantly weighing these massive trade-offs in their head.
Constantly. They're always comparing the long-term costs of inaction against the short-term risks of making a change.
I feel like most people are terrified of short-term pain.
Absolutely. Most leaders avoid the immediate pain, the layoffs, the restructuring, the awkward board conversations. But the WSSN looks right past that. They only fear the long-term rot of the system.
That makes sense.
They are totally unmoved by what the report calls local fluctuations. You know, the daily office drama just does not faze them because they're looking at the next decade, not the next Tuesday.
However, and this is a really big begs, however, this intense internal processing definitely comes with a cost. The report has a section called the shadow blind spot.
Ah, yes. The rhythm gaps. This is absolutely the Achilles heel of the World Awakener. The dynamic here is defined as clarity internally, silence externally.
Okay, I definitely feel like I have been on the receiving end of this dynamic.
Oh, we all have.
You are working for someone, a big problem comes up, and you just get zero feedback. Just absolute silence from the top.
And it is completely maddening for a team because the WSSN is deep in their fermentation phase. They actually think they're being highly responsible by not speaking until they have the perfect answer.
But the team can't see the fermentation.
Exactly. The team doesn't see the mental math. They just see a boss staring out the window while the house is seemingly on fire.
So the team ends up feeling, what, totally abandoned?
Suspended in uncertainty is how the report puts it. The WSSN's external composure, that famous poker face we talked about, actually backfires on them here.
How so?
It masks the genuine, crushing pressure they are actually under. The team looks at them and thinks, well, the boss looks super calm, so they clearly have no plan. Or worse, they just don't care about us.
Meanwhile, internally, the boss is basically hyperventilating, trying to save everyone's jobs.
Exactly. It's this incredibly tragic disconnect. Their silence creates a massive leadership vacuum, and the team's fear just rushes in to fill that vacuum.
Let's talk about how this all plays out in broader social relationships. The system calls them the helmsman, which obviously implies that people naturally look to them to steer the ship.
They really do. Whether it's in a friend group, a family, or a massive corporation, the WSSN is usually viewed as the one who shows the way.
Right.
When things get incredibly confusing or chaotic, everyone naturally turns to them. They are implicitly trusted as the source of necessary change.
But that has to put a ton of pressure on the followers too, doesn't it?
Oh, a huge amount of psychological pressure. Because remember, the followers are almost always kept entirely in the dark during the long fermentation phase.
Right.
So when the WSSN finally does make their sudden move, The followers just have to scramble to catch up. The report specifically notes that followers often struggle with the thought, can I actually match the pace of this sudden change?
It's basically like being strapped into a roller coaster in the pitch dark. You have no idea the huge drop is coming until your stomach is suddenly in your throat.
That's a great way to put it. The WSSN has spent months bracing for the turn, but the passengers haven't had any warning at all.
So if you are a listener out there running a business, or maybe you realize you are a world awakener yourself and you're looking for your place in the world, where is the actual value here? What is the core business value of this ME80 profile?
Their absolute superpower is structural reorientation judgment.
And breaking that down, that basically means knowing exactly when and how to pivot.
It means perfectly calibrating the precision between preservation and transformation.
Okay.
Look, a lot of leaders are really good at preservation. They keep the status quo running smoothly. And some leaders are great at transformation. They just blow everything up and start over. But the WSSN knows exactly what pieces to keep and what pieces to completely change.
So they are kind of like surgeons. They cut out the specific tumor, but they manage to save the organ itself.
Yes, and they execute these key pivots at the exact right moment. But here's the really nuanced part of their business value. They design buffers. Because they have already simulated the entire change in their head, they know exactly where the resulting shock waves are going to hit the hardest.
I see.
So they design transition mechanisms well in advance so that the shock of the change doesn't accidentally destroy the group they're trying to save.
Can you give me a concrete example of a buffer?
Sure. Imagine a company absolutely has to lay off 20% of its staff to avoid going completely bankrupt. A reactive, short-term leader just fires them on a Friday and logs off.
Right. Terrible.
But a WSSN anticipates the massive culture shock that will follow. So they might create a really generous severance package, hire an outplacement firm, and set up a detailed town hall meeting schedule weeks before they ever make the announcement.
They are buffering the emotional impact on the survivors.
Exactly. They actively manage the entire structural transition, not just the isolated event of the firing.
That makes total sense, and it leads us perfectly into career paths. If you are wired this way, if you are a WSSN, where should you actually be working? The report lists some very specific recommended fields.
You basically want to be in any field where the structure itself is the product. So organizational transformation and strategic planning is a huge one.
Like consulting.
Consulting, or being the executive directing a company's second curve, essentially reinventing a legacy business right before it dies.
That fits perfectly. What else?
System restructuring.
Yeah.
This is all about establishing new rules when the old orders completely fail.
So that could be outside of business, too.
Oh, absolutely. It could be in government policy, corporate turnarounds, or big legal reform. Really, anywhere the rulebook is just fundamentally broken and needs to be rewritten from scratch.
The report also mentions something called directional governance.
Right. Long-term risk and directional governance. This is planning for what they call future survival space.
Okay.
Think about things like massive urban planning projects, 50-year climate change strategies, or even ultra-long-term estate planning. You are tasked with securing a future that does not even exist yet.
And finally, there is the really big one on the list.
Social issues and collective change. This is about leading massive conceptual shifts in society. And this is exactly where the World Awakener actually earns their dramatic name.
Changing the paradigm.
Yes. They change the fundamental paradigm of how a society thinks about an issue.
Like the people who completely shifted the global conversation on, say, the viability of remote work or bringing mental health awareness into the corporate mainstream.
Exactly. They saw the deep structural issue in society, fermented on it, and then forcefully steer the collective consciousness toward a brand new way of operating.
Man, we have covered a ton of ground today, from the silent internal fermentation all the way to global societal impact. I really want to wrap this up with a final thought for you. If you, the listener, are a WSSN, or maybe you just realized you are being led by one, what is the ultimate takeaway here?
The best summary is really this. The World Awakener's massive changes are never just disruptions for the sake of drama.
They aren't just bored.
All right, they don't shake things up just to see what happens. Every structural shift they make is a choice that is fundamentally accountable to the future.
Accountable to the future. I really love that phrasing. It's not about being comfortable today. It is entirely about surviving tomorrow.
It is. And the report actually offers this beautiful goal sentence at the very end to kind of tie it all together.
Let's hear it.
It says, when the reorientation truly lands, systems restabilize, and groups benefit accordingly, That is when the world becomes truly awakened.
That is the big payoff, the renewed stability waiting on the other side of the storm.
Exactly. The awakening isn't the loud chaos of the alarm clock going off. It is the clear, focused morning that follows it.
That is just a fantastic place to leave it. Now, for those of you whose ears really perked up during this deep dive, maybe you recognized your own weird quirks or finally figured out why your boss just stares out the window all day. This incredible information comes from a very specific source.
Yes, all of this is from the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. It is an incredibly deep, complex system. If you want to understand your own energy matrix, you definitely need to check them out.
You can visit their official website directly at www.maxenergylife.com. Or, if you are over on social media, you can just search on Facebook. You can look for Max Energy Auhi or search for Met Energy Out.
There is an entire world of these different energy codes to explore, and they are all just as fascinating as this one.
So here is the final provocative question I want you to walk away with today. Think about your own life right now. Are you just reacting to the immediate noise, the endless emails, the text messages, the tiny daily fires? Or are you, like the World Awakener, actively scanning the distant horizon for the direction that is actually going to matter in 3 years?
Basically, are you just busy patching the boat, or are you actually charting the course?
Something to ferment on, for sure. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.